Okay, we are now broadcasting. And we are recording. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Susan Schaefer with Ships and Trips Travel. I'm located in Tennessee. We also have Maria Stephanopoulos here today down in Tampa with Ingenious Travel. And this is Take a Virtual Vacation. Today's vacation, we are going to skip across the pond. We're also going to go ahead about 6 hours. I believe it is currently 8 p.m. in the United Kingdom. So we're not only going to travel to another country, but we're traveling in time. And today is, all about Scotland. And so what Take a Virtual Vacation is a weekly escape to visit different destinations, domestic and international, so that when you're ready to travel, you've gotten some education and you've also had some escapism. But this will give you some ideas of where you might like to travel when the time comes. What Take a Virtual Vacation is, it's a cooperation of 4 travel agents with 4 different travel agencies. That would be Maria Stephanopoulos, Ingenious Travel, myself, Susan Schaefer with Ships and Trips Travel, Barbara Oliver with All Together Now Travel, which is in California, and Gail Sherman, who is with Wine Lovers Travel, also located in California. So if you have any questions after today's webinar, or if you're watching this recording and you have questions that aren't answered in the presentation, feel free to reach out to any of the 4 of us. We'd be happy to answer your questions. We'd also be happy to help you plan your trip to Scotland or anywhere else in the UK or anywhere else in the world. So with that, I am going to hand this off to Neil and Marina, and they are going to take us to Scotland.
Hello, everyone. I'm Neil, and together with me is Marina. We are the owners of M&N Travel, which is a luxury bespoke destination management company based here in the UK. We're going to take, as Susan says, a virtual tour through Scotland. Scotland itself is a country of kings, of queens, of historic battles, the Vikings, not Romans. Romans never made it past Hadrian's Wall, and the barbarians kept them back. It is a country made famous by such Hollywood icons as Braveheart, as the recent TV series of Outlander. Why Scotland? A question that people may say, why would I want to go to Scotland? Well, it's got breathtaking scenery, dramatic landscapes, lochs, mountains. It's got a huge coast of over 6,200 miles, more castles than you can ever believe. Some of them still occupied by the landed gentry. Some of them now are ruined. Some of them are even hotels where you can stay, and we'll come across that a bit later. As I say, it's got a rich history with the kings, the queens, the battles, the intrigue, the politics, and it's got a wonderful, welcoming culture. It's got some good food. We'll talk about some of the traditional Scottish foods later on in this presentation, but more importantly, it has whiskey, the famous old Scotch. It has over 120 different distilleries situated around Scotland. And again, we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later on. And golf. It has some of the most famous, some of the greatest golf courses in the world located within its boundaries. And the people. It has wonderfully friendly, welcoming people. It also has quite a historical connection with those who are in North America, where people have moved over from Scotland to the USA, to Canada. Well, they've moved all over the world, but the USA and Canada certainly is a location where lots of Scottish people moved over to. With that in mind, what we are able to do, if you have any family or ancestry who are or originated from Scotland, we are able to instruct our experts to carry out a search of your family tree to see where your ancestors lived, where they worked, where they were based, and we can orchestrate a customized tour based solely upon your family's history, and we can take you around and show you around Scotland. As I was talking to you before, the dramatic scenery that there in the top left-hand corner is one of the Scottish islands, the Isle of Skye. You can see how rugged and the colours, just beautiful. Down below, underneath that, you see that the cobbled streets and the old tall buildings of Edinburgh town centre. And there we have a Scottish man in traditional Scottish dress. Over on the top left-hand corner, we have Bass Rock. That is the home of a former prison, a medieval chapel, and now is the largest gannet sanctuary in the world. I believe there's over 150,000 gannets there, and it's now recognised as a nature reserve. Underneath that, we have Glamis Castle. That is the childhood home of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. And over there on the right, we have Dunatar Castle, again, an important castle in Scottish history. And that is where the crown jewels were buried when Oliver Cromwell was coming up to attack back in the 1600s. So when we think about Scotland, we think about the clans, the Campbells, the Mackenzies, the MacLeods. Clans, unfortunately, fell very much out of power following the Jacobite Revolution and the Battle of Culloden, which killed over 1,500 clansmen in about half an hour back in 1746. There is still some evidence of the clans in existence today. They do have sort of celebrations, they do have annual get-togethers, or even the Queen attends at one point for a period during the year. The clans themselves, now I mentioned the names of Campbell, Mackenzie, etc. Now, they would be run by a clan chief, a clan chieftain. And everybody within the same clan would have the name, for example, Campbell. But that didn't mean that they were actually biologically related to them. People would take the name of the clan chief for protection purposes or to show loyalty to the clan. So it's not actually true that every Campbell in the world is biologically related. Kilts as well is one of those iconic Scottish things. You know, lovely picture there of a tartan kilt. Also famous from the film Braveheart, which was set, I think, late 1200s with William Wallace. Now you remember, everyone was running around in kilts. Well, actually, kilts weren't even an item of clothing worn at that time. They didn't come until a couple of hundred years later. So completely historically inaccurate, but as I say, it's Hollywood. Never let the truth get in the way of a good story. But there we are, you know, kilts are wonderfully Scottish mode of dress. Bagpipes as well. There is nothing more magical than hearing a bagpipe as you walk down the Royal Mile in Edinburgh, or you're driving along the Highlands and you may hear a lone bagpiper play and you look across the vista to the rugged, beautiful mountains in the background. I've heard bagpipers play all over the world, but there is something beautiful about hearing a bagpipe play in Scotland. It's almost as though it takes your soul for a dance. Haggis, one of the most famous Scottish exports or foods. It's one of Scotland's national foods. People often ask whether or what haggis actually is. Now, over the years, this question has been asked many, many, many times by visitors to Scotland. The answer used to be by the typical Scotsman was that a haggis is a four-legged animal with 2 legs shorter than the other, so it could stand upright on the mountains of the Highlands. And they would say that the best way to catch a haggis would be to run around the mountain in the opposite direction to which the haggis was travelling. Now, of course, this was all nonsense. The Scotsmen were having a good old laugh and a good old joke. But this story got told so much that when they surveyed a few years ago overseas visitors, a third of people genuinely thought that haggis was an animal. And some people had actually come over to Scotland specifically in the hope of trying to catch one. So no, haggis isn't an animal. I'm not going to tell you what is in it though, because if I do tell you what is in it, you will probably not eat it. I have known what is in haggis since I was a very small boy, and I only ate it for the first time about 5 years ago, and I am absolutely devastated because I've missed out on so many years of not trying the delicious haggis. You really, really must try haggis. It is nothing short of a delight. There again, we've got a picture there of a gentleman in a traditional Scottish dress. We've got a picture of some Highland games in the bottom left-hand corner. And then again, we've got a piper, a bagpiper. Whilst we're on that, and it reminds me, of course, we talked about kilts briefly before, but what I suspect most of you really want to know is it true that Scottish men were absolutely nothing under their kilt? Do they go, what I believe in modern parlance is called, do they go commando? Well, they carried out another survey of Scottish men who wear kilts, and it transpired that 38% of them actually did go commando. They also asked Scottish women what they would like the kilt-wearing Scottish men to wear under the kilt. And in a bizarre twist of fate, it came back that 40% of them would actually also like their man to be commando. And that got me thinking, you know, I do really hope that those two categories of people manage to find each other, because if you are in the 60% and you find one of the 40%, you are going to be massively disappointed. There we are, the top left-hand corner of that is some haggis. It is with some cabbage and potatoes. The bottom we have a Highland cow, and then we have a Ceilidh dancer, a Scottish dancer. So Edinburgh, we've got more than two, but two of the more famous cities are Edinburgh and Glasgow. Edinburgh is, of course, the capital of Scotland. It is famous for its 800-900-year-old castle that sits up high on a rock. It has such great events which take place in August of the Edinburgh Tattoo, which is a festival of British and Commonwealth military bands, and they play all the way throughout the month of August up at the castle. Really, really great event. It ends with one of the biggest firework displays. I mean, it's one of those type of things that would put the Olympics to shame. It's so grand. You've got the Edinburgh Fringe as well that takes place in August. It's quite a popular comedy festival. It takes place all the way through the month. You have lots of quirky comedy, some free comedy. It's really, really good fun. The only downside, of course, is if you do go to Edinburgh in August, it is really, really busy, which means that if you want to go and have a look at the tattoo, definitely recommended. Or if you want to experience the comedy festival of the Fringe, again, definitely recommended. You must book quite a lot in advance because it gets booked up really quick. And also, of course, because it is peak season, it's expensive. So, what we put together was a classic sort of 2-night stay in Edinburgh. What are the type of things that you can do in Edinburgh if you're not there for a particularly long period of time? Now, 2 nights is probably just about enough to get a flavour, a lay of the land, as it were. If you can spend more time in Edinburgh, of course, we recommend it, and there are lots of things to see. But here's some of the things that we suggest that we do. A must see is going to Edinburgh Castle, you know, an absolute must see. You've got contained within there reenactment of the dungeons, you've got the Scottish crown jewels, you've got the stone of Scone, which is the coronation stone which has been used in every English monarch's coronation from about 1296, I believe. There was a battle in 1290 thereabouts between the English and the Scottish, and the English won, and they took the stone from the Scottish and took it down to Westminster Abbey. As I say, it was used for almost 800 years thereabouts on every coronation. Queen Elizabeth II had that stone in her chair when she was crowned back in the 50s. We did, or the British government did, give it back to Scotland in 1996. So it's contained now in Edinburgh Castle. The Old Town as well, you can see the picture there next to the text. That's one of the sort of the cobbled alleyways of the Old Town. Really beautiful, very, very dramatic. We'd also suggest that you go to the Palace of Holyrood House. That is the Queen's official residence in Scotland. Balmoral is more of a personal residence, so Holyrood House, and she stays there about a week in July. And you can go there, and it also has historical importance with Mary Queen of Scots, Bonnie Prince John, who stayed there before the Battle of Culloden. I think it was 1945. He stayed there for a period of 6 weeks or thereabouts. You can go up to Arthur's Seat, which is about, as it says there, 251 metres above sea level, and it has some of the greatest views of Edinburgh. You can also indulge in some wonderful retail therapy on the Royal Mile. There is lots of clothes shops, tartan shops, real sort of Scottish memorabilia shops, really fantastic place to wander around and enjoy and immerse yourself in Scottish life. And it's also got four Michelin star restaurants. I'd also recommend that you go to the National Museum of Scotland and learn.
But if you've got more time.
Oh, so this is if you've got more time. Forgive me. So if you've got a bit more time.
2 nights, 2 days. What I do?
Yes. So you've got a little more time. So you go and see the National Museum of Scotland, or go and see the Royal Yacht Britannia, which is a little bit outside the city of Edinburgh. It's the Queen's official ship that used to travel all around the world with. I think it did over 1 million nautical miles before it was decommissioned in 98, I think it might have been. It's hosted some great American presidents such as Eisenhower, Gerald Ford, Clinton, even Reagan has been on there as well. And you can see the banqueting rooms, you can see her bedroom, you can go up on deck. I mean, really fantastic experience to go and have a look at. If you also have a large group, if people want to put a group together, or you have a large multi-generational family that wants to get together, you can actually hire the yacht as well for private functions, and you can sit in the banqueting hall all around and have servants come and feed you, etc. Real grand, beautiful stuff you can do. Also, there is ghost walks and ghost tours of Edinburgh that can be above ground or even below ground. There is a part of Edinburgh that was sealed off the beginning of last century, I believe, and it was lost for almost 100 years. And they reopened it up about 10 years ago, and it was all fully preserved. So you go underground, you've got shops, you've got alleyways, roads. It's really, really good to go and have a look at that as well. Go up to Calton Hill as well and have a look at the National Monument. Again, really good views of the city, great for photography. Or you can go on a sort of a gastronomical tour of Scotland and have a look at the traditional Scottish foods, etc. I mean, Scotland and Britain have had a bit of a bad rep over the last sort of 20, 30 years, maybe, for having pretty bad food. I'd say that was probably right about 20 years ago, but there's been quite a big movement over that period of time for the food to get much better in quality. So they actually, you get really good solid food there now. If you do some day tours, you've got a bit longer than the 2 nights, Rosslyn Chapel. Those of you who have watched the Da Vinci Code with Tom Hanks may recall seeing that chapel when they're in the search for the Holy Grail. Or you can go to Melrose Abbey, which is, as it says, the alleged burial site of Robert the Bruce's heart. Or take a trip up north to Stirling Castle. Now, this has historical importance, has been a coronation location of Mary Queen of Scots and some other Scottish kings and queens. Or go over to Loch Lomond, over to the west of the country, and learn more about Rob Roy, William Wallace, these icons of Scottish rebel history, if you like. You can also north, St Andrews, famous, of course, for golf, but that's not the only thing it offers. It's got its old ruined abbey, it's got some quaint coastal villages and beautiful towns, and actually the city itself is really quite lovely to walk around, really, really pleasant. You can go a little bit further north to Loch Ness. Well, have a little search for Nessie herself. Get yourself into a boat and see whether you can spot her. Good luck, you never know. But certainly worth having a look up there. And you've got Urquhart Castle on the coast, a ruined castle. Again, beautiful views looking over Loch Ness. Or you can go over into the Highlands, into Glencoe. Those of you who had watched Skyfall, the James Bond, when they go up to Skyfall, the scenery, the background, that is Glencoe. Beautiful part of Scotland, really dramatic part of Scotland. Or you can take a trip to Alnwick Castle, which is there in the picture. That is, or played part in the scene, or in the series of Harry Potter as Hogwarts. So this is the map to sort of show you where we are. So there's Edinburgh there, if you follow the cursor. There's Melrose Abbey with Robert the Bruce's heart. That is Rosslyn Chapel there. St Andrews is there. Stirling is over there. That's Loch Lomond and the Trossachs. Glencoe is up there. And we have Loch Ness is there. So you can see it's all drivable distance. It's all capable of being done in one day. Certainly if you come in from Edinburgh to Stirling, into Loch Lomond, up to Glencoe, and Fort Augustus and Loch Ness, it's going to be a very long day, maybe 12, 14 hours worth a day. There's a picture there of the Edinburgh Tattoo. As I say, it's the military bands that are playing through August, and Holyrood Palace there at the bottom, the Queen's official residence, and a picture of the Scottish Crown Jewels. There in the top left, we have a picture of a cannon. Now, that cannon, it sets off every day at 1 p.m, except for Sundays, except for Good Friday, and also for Christmas Day. And you can set your watch by it. It is at precisely 1 every day. And I think it's been doing that since around about 1896, thereabouts. Down the bottom, you'll see a picture of one of the rooms in Edinburgh Castle. Beautiful, beautiful place to visit. And there we have parts of Edinburgh. The famous top left-hand corner, Swilcan Bridge at the old course of St Andrews. The bottom there is Rosslyn Chapel. And then the right, we've got Stirling Castle, which we've already mentioned as the places that you can go and have a look at. So some of our favourite hotels. Well, if you're looking for luxury 5-star, then the most iconic hotel in the whole of Edinburgh is Balmoral. Absolutely great property, really, really good property. I believe after she was famous and after she'd written, I don't know which book it was, but J.K. Rowling stayed in one of the suites. And she finished the book there, one of the Harry Potters. And then on the back of there was not a statue. There was something in the room, in the bathroom, and she signed her name, didn't she? And you can go, and they've now renamed it the J.K. Rowling Suite, so you can stay there as well. So it's a little bit of Harry Potter history. The Witchery by the castle, you could not get a better location. This is right next to Edinburgh Castle. The only thing is it has 9 rooms. Great for, you know, a couple or for a family. Not so good if you've got, well, a small group. You might just about fit in if it's 18 people. If you don't have the budget for the Balmoral, then we'd recommend Kimpton Charlotte Square. It's a bit of, it's what, a 15-minute walk, 20-minute walk to the castle. The only thing is, walking from Charlotte Square, the castle will be uphill. The difficulty with Edinburgh and access to the castle is it's quite heavily pedestrianised. So if you've got mobility issues, it's probably not the best place to stay. A great property nonetheless, but if you do have mobility issues or you just want to be really smack bang in the centre, then we'd recommend Radisson Blu Royal Mile because of its location. It's a Radisson, but it's got a great location. Some other ones would be the Intercontinental, that's in the street behind the Kimpton, or if you want something different, stay at Fingal, which is a floating hotel which is next to the Royal Yacht Britannia. A really beautiful, beautiful place to stay. Some of our favourite hotels outside of Edinburgh. Dalhousie Castle, probably about 20-25 minutes outside of Edinburgh. It is a proper castle. It's a nice hotel. It plays its part in history. It's a very old hotel. I believe Edward Longshanks stayed there on his way up to battle with William Wallace back in the 1200s. It's said to be haunted, so, you know, enjoy. If your bedsheets move in the middle of the night, if you're alone, be afraid. There is a great bagpiper who works there on occasion. If you've got a group or you're having an event there, you can have dinner in the Dungeon restaurant. Really, really good. And if you get the opportunity to please do, because he will regale you with some of the greatest stories that you have ever heard. Grey Walls as well. This is not far outside of Edinburgh. In fact, it sits on the fairway of Muirfield Golf Course, which is one of the Open Championship golf courses in Scotland. So you can actually see the golf course from the property. And if you wanted to play, and I'll come on to talk about golf in a second, but if you wanted to play at Muirfield, this is a great hotel to locate yourself on. So if you've got a bit more time, or if you've been to Edinburgh before and want to sort of expand and develop your knowledge more of Scotland, these would be the sort of the classic Scotland tours, the type of things that you would definitely want to see.
That's what you want to do. If you only got a week in Scotland, for example, you always arrive in Edinburgh, start 2 nights, 2 days in Edinburgh, and then I would say usually people go via, if you can see the cursor, via Stirling Castle, Trossachs, and up to Fort William. So you would probably base yourself 1 night here because it's a long day. And next day, the highlight probably of all your trip would be Jacobite steam train. That's the Hogwarts Express. So it goes from, doesn't move. From Fort William all the way there. Ideally, you need a driver to pick you up at Malake, and then you continue your way all the way to Inverness. If you are self-driving, that it would be a return journey, so it would be to Malake and then back, which means you will have to stay for 2 nights in Fort William because it's too far. Scotland might seem as a small country, but actually it's very narrow roads and it's slow.
Yes.
So it takes ages to get anywhere.
Yes.
Then it's usually 2 nights in Inverness and you do your classic Loch Ness cruise. You go to Culloden And then on the way back to Edinburgh, it's scenic drive via Cairngorms. Oh, and of course, you have to visit one of the distilleries.
Yes, I'll come on to that in a second.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, so they're the things that Marina's just taken you through on the map. You know, Stirling Castle, Loch Lomond, Glencoe, the Highlands, the steam train of, you know, that you recognise from Harry Potter. Loch Ness as well, we've sort of talked about as well, where we're brought about the end of the Jacobite rising. So this is, if you've done classic Scotland, you've done Edinburgh, you've been up into the Highlands, you've done Loch Ness, etc. There is a part of Scotland here where the, so around this area here, so this is what's known as East Lothian. It's where Grey Walls is located at the hotel with Muirfield Golf Course. So you've got Tantallon Castle, built by the Douglas family in the 14th century, which sits on top of a cliff. Then you've got Dirleton Castle, the hideout of the notorious Bothwell, Mary, Queen of Scots' husband. And you've got various sort of abbeys and Bassrock we've talked about before with the Sanctuary for Gannets, etc. Really, really nice part of Scotland if you've been other places.
And it's the sunniest
as well. And actually has its weirdo microclimate and is supposed to be the sunniest place in Scotland. So this is the castles in the Highlands. So some of the things that you can do in Scotland would be to take a Land Rover safari through the Balmoral estate. Of course, as I say, the personal residence of Her Majesty the Queen. Unfortunately, the castle itself isn't open to the public, but sometimes the gardens are, but not when she is in residence. She's normally there in July, August, I think.
Yeah, so I think it's open from the end of April until mid-July. Well, the estate. So you can take a Land Rover safari of the estate. And I think sometimes they open Great Hall for if they've got any exhibitions, but not the castle. Then, of course, it's fly fishing. A lot of castles in the area. So Black Castle, Glamis Castle, and Scone Palace. I think so. The map shows, so that's like a Scone Palace, Black Castle, Balmoral Castle here. So that's the village, the Braemar village, when Neil mentioned. So every second weekend in September, they do annual Highlands Games. So people around the world, thousands of people around the world come to watch it, and Queen always attends.
You can also do fly fishing or sea fishing. There's over 31,000 lochs or lakes or enclosed spaces of water of various sizes within Scotland, and some tremendous salmon fishing, fly fishing. You can probably find somewhere within Scotland a very isolated place where you can just enjoy fishing in the middle of nowhere, full of nature, peaceful, and you will be the only person in the loch or the lake or what have you. Really, really great for, forgive me. Yeah, we'll talk about that yet. Whiskey distilleries, I'll come on to talk about that in a bit more detail in a second. But if you're looking for something different to do, why not have a helicopter ride through the Cairngorms, which is one of the 2 national parks in Scotland and formulates part of the Highlands. Again, spectacular, beautiful, rugged scenery, really worth a go. Or indeed, if you want to go hunting as well, we've mentioned fishing, we can also just mention hunting as well. Has lots of availability for grouse shooting, for stag hunting, roe deer hunting, pheasants, you know, all those things we can sort of organise if people were interested in that. Or if you don't want to shoot Bambi, you can shoot it with a camera, if you like. You can do photography tours and really great locations for stunning photographs. So this would be the Highlands. So here we have Inverness, Clava Cairns, Cawdor Castle, Eileen Donnan Castle, and the Isle of Skye there, and then the Torridon. So this is the sort of the location we're looking. We're now north Scotland, so towards the top. John O'Groats, the top part of the UK is just up there. So the very, very top of Scotland is where we are at the minute. So some of the things that you can do, you can go on to the Isle of Skye. Again, great for hunting, great for fishing. There's a Michelin star restaurant there. There's some great manor houses, wonderful scenery, wildlife, very, very peaceful to enjoy. It just does take a while to get up there because it's quite far north. You can go foraging on the shores of lochs, looking for garlic, edible mushrooms, in the company of a local expert who will explain all this local produce to you and how they use it in their ingredients, etc. And as I say, the Clava Cairns, so it's a well-preserved Bronze Age cemetery complex.
Outlander stones. And
it's the Outlander stones. Marina tells me the Outlander stones. So favourite castle hotels, as I said at the beginning, touched upon it. Lots of castles in Scotland, some of them are now hotels. Crossbasket Castle at the top, that's just outside Glasgow, really beautiful property. If you can make it out, do we have better picture later on? I think we do. I'll mention that later on, because you'll see, you look at it and you think that's got to have been photoshopped. It just looks fairy tale, but it isn't. It really looks like that. Beautiful, beautiful place. Underneath there, we've got Cromlix, which is just north of Edinburgh. For those of you who are tennis fans, that is owned by the Scottish legend Sir Andy Murray, the former Wimbledon champion, world #1 and Olympic gold medalist. Really, really nice place to stay. And of course, up at Fort William is the legendary Inverloch Castle, again, a superb property. There's also, and one of our favourite properties in the whole of Scotland is the Isle of Eriska, the top. You'll see, you can just make it out there on the left-hand side. I think, again, we've got better pictures of it. And you'll see that on the right-hand side, the little wooden rickety bridge. Now, this is how you get on to this property. It is on its own private island. So you drive along this bridge, it sort of creaks and crackles, and it's just so beautiful. Really is like going back in time to another world. Marina and I have been there so many times, and because it's quite remote, because you're on a private island, because there is nothing else there. Each time we go, despite the fact that we've been there before, we always have this sort of strange trepidation, I suppose. Are we going to be all right? Are we going to be bored? There's nothing here. Well, 4-5 days later, we're about to leave, and the pair of us are almost in tears because we do not want to leave, because we just would want to spend another week there, because, I don't know, it does something to your soul. You come back a regenerated, rejuvenated person after spending some time there. Really could not recommend that highly enough. And then you've got Rockpool, again, a really nice property up in Inverness. And Glen Eagles, there really is not much to say about Glen Eagles. It is Glen Eagles. It is fantastic. Great for golf, of course. The European PGA Academy is there. You've got outdoor pursuits, 4x4 safaris, hunting, shooting, great activities for kids. I mean, to be fair, you could probably spend a week or 10 days in Glen Eagles and be completely and utterly happy with your week or 10 days. It has got everything there. Really,
and actually,
really
it's perfect location as well, because you can do there's a map. So Glen Eagles is here, so you can do all your day trips from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll see, Cromlix is there, Dalhousie there, Grey Walls there, Crossbasket just outside of Edinburgh, Eriska there. I mean, as Marina said before, it takes about 3.5 hours to travel this far, and it's because of the roads, really. Whereas, the distance between Edinburgh and Glasgow, it's about an hour. And it's not much further as the crow flies between those two. It's just crazy. And then Inverloch, again, fantastic property, and Rockpool, again, beautiful places. So the top left-hand corner, we've got a picture of Glencoe, as I said before, you know, really stunning scenery. Then a Scotsman in his traditional dress, and then a man enjoying himself in one of the many lochs fly fishing. Then we've got Inverary, Loch Ness, and Doon Castle as well.
That's Game of Thrones.
That's Game of Thrones. The top left-hand corner, we've got Melrose Abbey, the place where Robert the Bruce's heart is said to be buried. Again, we've got the Isle of Skye there, and then some great Scottish seafood. So, what would you do if you bring your family over to Scotland? Because it's not just about, you know, couples going or groups going or what, you know, what would you do? Well, you would do the things that we've already recommended that you do, but then there are other things that you can see or additional things that you can do associated with what you're already going to see. So one of them that we would recommend is see Edinburgh in 2 Mini Coopers. So be driven around and get to see all the sights, makes it a little bit more exciting, a bit more fun. Or you can have a family-friendly quiz when you go around Edinburgh Castle. You know, really educational, really helps the children to learn about the history and what is associated with the castle itself. Really, really good. Or you can go to a local farm, meet the animals. You know, kids in the main, they love animals. Have a look at the homegrown produce, be educated about how the sort of the farm works. Or you can go on a Segway tour of a Highland estate and have a look around with that. I mean, to be fair, I don't think I'd probably do that, but then I'm quite clumsy and would probably fall over. But you know, something different to have a go, or some pony trekking through the rivers, the pine forests, just tremendous. As Marina's already mentioned, we've got the Hogwarts Express, famous from Harry Potter over the Glenfinnan Viaduct. Great experience, and kids just love it. Or you can go on a seaplane. So you go over to Loch Lomond, which is on the west of the country, get into a seaplane, soar up above the lake, have a look at the mountains, have a look at the vista, just really, really good fun. Or again, you know, back onto the farm theme, you know, enjoy working with some sheepdogs, see how it's done, see the way the locals work and how they farm the sheep. Or you can go on a privately chartered boat and go around whichever of the large lochs you want to. We can source all of that type of thing for everybody. And then there's the Wallace Monument as well. So there's one of the seaplanes. There's a picture of Culloden. And what you see when you go to Culloden is there's a picture there, you see Clan Mackintosh. Now, what they have done is they've put stones for every name of the clans who lost their lives. So you walk around and you see lots of big stones with the names of the clans. Now, it's quite tragic. It's quite, you know, emotional. Really good day out, but emotional nonetheless. But what you must do is look out for the ghost. And if you see a big old Highland man wearing clothes that don't necessarily look in place, and if he's walking around saying defeated, and then disappears, you know you've met the famous ghost of Culloden battlefield. Again, there's the Jacobite steam train, a bit of falconry for the kids, and playing with the gun dogs, the Labradors. That's probably Glen Eagles, isn't it? Yeah. So, apart from the history, something for the children, Edinburgh, you've also got a romantic side to Edinburgh. In some respects, what can be more romantic than to be in the countryside, to be in the middle of nowhere, perhaps in a castle with a roaring fire, a glass of champagne? I mean, what more could get you in the mood for romance? If that doesn't do it for you, Scotland does have great seafood and some great oysters, which are, of course, one of nature's aphrodisiacs. So we can set up for a wonderful romantic time in Scotland. So forgive me, before we move on, that is Crossbasket Castle, the one that we said before about it looking photoshopped. It really does look like that. It's a lovely place to relax and unwind. So what we came up with is, you know, if someone wants a short break to relax, to unwind, what would we do for, or what would you do in Scotland? So we thought, well, how about a night in Crossbasket, that lovely, not photoshopped castle, 5 nights in Eriska, the place where Marina and I are always worried about going to and never want to leave when it's time to go, and spend some time, you know, on Loch Lomond, through the Trossachs, get a look at the scenery, you know, nature, deer, beautiful, have a day out on the Jacobite steam train, go on a luxury yacht around some of the lochs, maybe have a go at archery, clay pigeon shooting, fishing, go on a tour of Glencoe with a guide and they'll explain all the history of it. You know, just something to immerse yourself, relax and enjoy what is around you. Again, there's Crossbasket in a bit more detail. So there's one of the drawing rooms and one of the bathrooms. And again, there is Eriska in more detail. Again, the lovely rickety bridge. You can see the property now in more detail, and one of the lovely bedrooms. And staff are just amazing. If you didn't want to stay in the main house, they do have what's called hilltop reserves. So they've got jacuzzis on the balcony, and they overlook the lochs and the mountains in the background. Just breathtaking. If you are a fan of Outlander, well, you're in luck, because it's all, or well, it was in the earlier series, all about Scotland. Now, I must confess, when it first came out, I'd never even heard of it. And it was about 3 years ago, there or thereabouts, Marina came to me and she's like, do you want to try this Outlander? I've heard really good things about it. And I was like, well, what's it about? And she's like, well, it's about this nurse that goes back in time a few hundred years ago and is walking around Scotland. I said, I don't want to watch that. But after a little bit of persuasion, I'm not going to tell you how she persuaded me, but after a little bit of persuasion, 2 or 3 episodes in, I was absolutely hooked. I mean, once you get over the nonsense of the premise of a time traveling nurse, it's really quite good. And it does give you some great historical background to some of the events that happened in Scottish and British history. Also shows you the great sort of scenery. And also it's just really, really good fun. Thoroughly enjoy it. So you can do a specific Outlander tour. Now, you'll see all the different sort of locations. So this is the whole of Scotland here. So you'll see that they're quite spread out, really. If you wanted to do them all, it would take how long?
Days.
12 days. 12 days to do it all. I mean, of course, there are ones located around here that you could do in a day or 2 day trip, depending on how long you were going to spend in each sort of location. But you'll see that they're all located there. And that's something that you can do. You can intersperse that with other time, see bits of it, see it at your leisure, but if you're a really hardcore fan, you can absolutely see all of that. Another suggested thing to do would be to travel around the NC 500, the North Coast 500. It is Scotland's answer to Route 66. It's about 560 miles, I think, to travel all the way around it. You normally start in Inverness. Oh, here we are. So you'll start in Inverness. Well, you can go whichever way you want to, which way around, and you go all around the sort of the coast. Torridon, that's a lovely property just there on the coast, really, really nice, and travel all the way around. And the drive itself is just magnificent. But it is very much a driving holiday. If you don't like driving, then it's probably not for you. But if you do like stunning scenery, you do enjoy driving, then it's very much something to have a go at. Marina and I have done probably half of it.
It's quite scary.
Look,
The
I mean,
roads are windy and
I drive like a lunatic anyway, so I had a great time. Marina was a little bit sort of more apprehensive than I was, but there isn't that much else to do, say, for the scenery. But the scenery itself, to be fair, I thought was worth it. Really, really, really nice. Oh, and if you can make it that bit more special. I mean, we have in the past offered people to do it in classic cars or supercars. Of course, if that's not your budget, that's fine. Hire I'd say a decent-ish car and travel, not a sort of a very small car. Don't do that. Hire something a bit more substantial. Golf. Well, Scotland and golf are synonymous with each other. It is the home to the home of golf, St Andrews. It is the #1 golf pilgrimage in the world. It is a fantastic place for golf. You've got, as I've already mentioned, the Open Championship courses of Troon, of Turnberry. The original Open Championship was held here in Prestwick. So this is where, so we've got Royal Troon there, Prestwick there, and that is Turnberry as well. But they are, and even to be fair, the Gaelies as well. They're great golf courses. This one over here, I'm not going to pronounce it because I will pronounce it incorrectly. Unbelievable golf course. You've got the ocean in the background. You are hitting shots over the ocean. Oh, just amazing. The only problem is it's quite difficult to get to. So, you know, if you want a big golfing holiday and you wanted to make the trip specially, worth it. But if you had limited time, I'd stick to these courses here. On this side, we've got Muirfield. You know, as I say, that hotel we mentioned before, Grey Walls, great property, sits right on the fairway of Muirfield. The legendary St Andrews over here. And then we have Carnoustie again. Both St Andrews, Carnoustie are Open Championship golf courses. And then Glen Eagles Ryder Cup golf venue back in, now you're going to test my memory, is it 2014 maybe? And then up here, we've got Royal Dornoch, which is consistently voted one of the best golf courses in the world. Well, to be fair, most of the Open Championships are consistently voted in the top 20 of the best golf courses in the world. And you've got some other, you know, you've got over 500 golf courses in Scotland. You can take your pick. It is a great place to play golf. What we would suggest, if you've got some limited time, would be St Andrews 3 nights. You've got the old course, of course, but it is quite difficult to get tee times there. There are a few ways to get tee times. One is which they release some advanced bookings in and around about, I think it's September each year, but they go so quickly. There is limited amount that gets released. The second is that you can, some hotels would have allocated tee times, but again, they get sold very, very quickly. Or the third way to get them is to go in what's known as the ballot. Now that is where you put your name down, I believe about 48 hours before, and then they let you know the night before whether you've been successful, I think, from memory. Oh no, there is a fourth way, forgive me. You can then hang around St Andrews Golf Club all day, hoping that there might be a 2-ball or a 3-ball, and they might let you on if you're a single player, or 2-ball if it's 2 of you. But of course, you've got to be there at the crack of dawn, and you could be there all day and not get on. But nonetheless, there are, I believe, about 5 or 6 golf courses associated with St Andrews and on the St Andrews complex. So it's not just the old course. You can play the Castle course, the new course, or the Jubilee course, all great golf courses in their own right. Beautiful golf courses. Then pop over to Glen Eagles over here. Of course, as I say, home to the European PGA Academy. Again, brilliant golf course, host of the Ryder Cup, and then you stay over here in from Glen Eagles you would then play Carnoustie over there, and then you would finish up in Grey Walls where you would play Muirfield, and then back home. We can also do it on the other side as well, forgive me before I move on. So you can do Turnberry, Prestwick, the Galleys and Troon as well. Whiskey, well, you've got golf and you've got whiskey. The water of life. That comes from the Gaelic, Uisce Bea, which simply translates to be the water of life. It is the national drink of Scotland. Some may say it's a national pastime. I don't think I'd go that far, but certainly they like a wee dram. There are over 120 distilleries in and around Scotland, and these are the main areas for Scotch, for Scotch whisky. So we have Speyside here. So you've got around about 50 distilleries. I'll show a map in a second where it sort of breaks them down a bit more. Then you've got the Highlands, which is all this bit here, excluding Speyside, around about 47 distilleries. Lowlands, which is here, I think about 18. And then Islay, it looks like it said Islay, but it's pronounced Islay. That's got 9 distilleries on that small island. But this really is hardcore Scotch. This is powerful, real connoisseur stuff. So if you just want a sort of a introduction to Scotch whisky, probably stick to the Lowlands. There are various distilleries in and around Edinburgh, various distilleries in and around Glasgow. Go for a little day trip, couple of hours, taste the whiskey, job done. You've had the experience. Really, really nice. If you're a bit more interested, then probably the best place to have a look at would be Speyside, and you'll see why now. So this is Speyside drilled into a bit more, and you'll see they're all located very, very close, very easy access to do them. So if you wanted to spend a week in Speyside checking out as many of the distilleries as possible, then this is probably a really good place to be. Now, we can make recommendations for which ones to go and see, but as you can see, there are that many of them that we find it's probably easier. And the people who would come to us to say, well, want to spend some time in Speyside, normally know what they want to see. Some people may like Glenlivet, they may not like Glenfiddich, they may like Macallan. It's all down to individual sort of preferences, but you can certainly get as hammered as you want to, and you'd be welcome to as well. So food, we have touched upon some of the aspects of Scottish food. It's got great seafood. We've talked a bit about the haggis. Haggis itself is normally served. So you see there a nice picture of some haggis. Normally served with neeps and tatties. Now, neeps and tatties. Neeps are mashed turnips, and tatties are mashed potato. So they're normally sort of served together. Now, as I said, that haggis is Scotland's national dish. But there was quite a controversy back, I think it was 2016, where a food journalist carried out a bit of digging and discovered that the first written down reference to a recipe for haggis was in an English cookbook. Now, the truth of the matter is that haggis is as Scottish as they come. I understand that haggis was probably eaten all over the British Isles around about that time, and realistically it was probably recorded in England and that was just the first record that they could find. Certainly, what I wouldn't do if you are in Scotland is ever suggest that haggis is English. If you do, you may be met with the offer of what is known as a Glasgow kiss. A Glasgow kiss, you say? That doesn't sound too bad. I suspect it's just a variation of the European cheek kiss. Or maybe it's a slightly more erotic version of the French kiss. Ooh la la. It isn't. If anybody ever, when you're in Scotland, offers to give you a Glasgow kiss, my advice to you is to run. Run as fast as you can. Because no, despite its slightly nice name, it's a headbutt. But don't worry, I absolutely promise you that nobody, when you're in Scotland, will ever offer to headbutt you. They love Americans. And again, just a couple of examples of traditional Scottish food. So porridge, Scotch oats, the neeps and tatties there you can see with the traditional haggis. And also you've got a Scotch meat pie. And whilst we're just sort of finishing off, a little sort of a story about haggis and how haggis is traditionally eaten and when it's eaten. You can have it for breakfast, but it is, or takes quite a centre stage on a particular night celebrated in Scotland on the, I think it's the 25th of January every year. And that night, you may have heard of it, it's called Burns Night. If you haven't, I'll talk a little bit about it. So Burns Night is a celebration of the poet, the Scottish poet and lyricist Robert Burns, or Rabbie Burns, as they call him in Scotland. Some of you may think, oh, sounds familiar, but I don't know who he is. Well, you do know who he is. And the reason why I say that with such confidence is, on the 31st of December every year at midnight, most of us sing a song called Auld Lang Syne. Well, he was the guy that rewrote an old folk song and gave us the modern lyrics of Auld Lang Syne. So on Burns Night, 25th of January, everyone will get together and they'll be wearing traditional Scottish dress. They will be formally dressed, so the kilts, etc. There'll be a bagpiper. He will pipe in the guests. They will then sit down. They will say a grace. And the grace that they normally say as a matter of tradition is called the Selkirk grace. Now, at a Burns dinner, it's normally said in what's known as a Lallans dialect. I am not going to try a Lallans dialect because I will make an absolute fool of myself, more so than I have already. But I'm going to say it in the modern sort of way. And my understanding is this was actually how Robert Burns himself said it. And it goes like this. Some have meat, but cannot eat. Some have none, but want it. We have meat, and we can eat. So let the Lord be thanked. It's quite an old grace, and it existed before Robert Burns's times. But it's called the Selkirk grace because I believe he delivered it in the presence of Lord Selkirk at some point at some big posh dinner, and from then on it's been called the Selkirk grace. So then after they've done that, they would have a soup course, then the main event. They will bring haggis, and the haggis itself will be treated with such respect that it, of course, has to be piped in as well by the bagpiper. They will then read out Rabbie Burns's address to the haggis. They, of course, it being Scotland, will toast the haggis by drinking whiskey. They'll eat other courses, dessert. Then there'll be speeches about Robert Burns's life, his work, and then there will be, the host will give what is known as an address to the ladies, which will be a humorous take on his views on women. Then if the women are present, they will get to give a reply, which is a humorous take on the thoughts about men. And then there'll be drinking and dancing and much merriment. So if you ever get the opportunity to attend a Burns dinner, you really, really should. If not, and you're in Scotland and you want to do it, you are not prevented by the fact that it's not January 25th. It can be organised. You can have your own private Burns night if you want. Again, there's just some examples of the traditional Scottish food: black pudding, shortbread, and the great Scottish salmon, some of the best salmon in the world. That brings an end to our short presentation. There were some questions that people wanted answering. I think I've covered most of them, haven't I? Is there any more questions that have come in?
We have. Well, first of all, thank you. That was extremely informative. And after been to Scotland myself, I can't wait to go back. I do have a question about the NC 500. Is that a single lane road or a double lane road?
It's single in either direction, but okay. It's quite wide. It's okay. Yeah. It's the twists and turns, the uphill, downhill that makes it. Yeah. And Marina, bless her, she was hanging on to this side, and I put it into sport, and I was like, let's go. But so.
But when I was there, I was the one who drove, so I'm familiar with those single lane roads, and I don't think I would have done well as a passenger in the car. It's a little different if you're not used to it, But yeah, you have pretty much answered the questions that we've got. Is there a better time to visit Scotland?
Oh yeah. Well, August, as we say, is a great time to visit. Edinburgh is really big. Probably you can go at any time of year, but some castles, some attractions don't open up until mid-April. Some might open a bit earlier. They will close in October normally. But you can go. Most of the big ones. Certainly Edinburgh's open all year round. It's just some of the smaller places. The Jacobite steam train. When does that?
Mid-April.
Mid-April. So it depends what you want to see, what you want to do.
And do the northern areas get snow? Yes.
Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah. You can ski in parts of the Cairngorms and the Trossachs. I mean, we don't offer it as a skiing destination because why would you? You especially to Americans generally. So yeah.
Okay. Very good. Very good. The rest of my questions were answered throughout the presentation. Susan, do you have any?
I only have one. Neil, you had mentioned about the military tattoo that you should book that quite a bit in advance.
Yes.
I mean, in my mind, I have it, like you should book it like 9 to 12 months in advance, but can you book it further out than that? Or how far out should you be trying to book August if you want to see the military tattoo?
I believe they released tickets in end of November, December. So it's
okay.
It'll be end of November, be
about 9 months.
Yes, about 9 months. Now you could get your accommodations in advance. You just couldn't get the tattoo tickets before that.
Okay. Very good.
Perfect.
Okay, I don't have any more questions. Like I said, you answered my other questions throughout the presentation, so thank you very much for that. It was very informative. Love the stories.
Yeah, we do not have any more questions, so that is all that we have for today. I really do appreciate Marina and Neil taking the time, though, to take us to Scotland and to get us really excited about seeing all that there is to see over there. So if anybody is interested in Scotland, if you have any other additional questions, this is the contact information where you can reach myself, Maria, Barbara, or Gail, and we can get the answers for you if we don't actually have them. Actually, something.
Oh.
Okay, somebody is asking about Altyre, Altyere. That's an abbey, isn't it?
Yes, it might be. Bear with me.
I think that's where his, if I remember correctly, that might be the abbey where his ancestor died. So, but that would be a location where if, again, because you go back, you talked about ancestry early on, that if they had that specific ancestry that they wanted to go visit, specific locations or specific abbeys, tied to their family history, that's something that could be put together for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they were born in or family were born in a certain town or village, and then they travel to another town or village, those type of things that we can put together as a particular itinerary for that individual person to trace their family roots.
Yep, it would be the Cummings clan, the Red Cummings.
Wow, I only know about 20 clan names. There are loads of them. So yeah, I mean, yeah, no problem at all. It's not me or Marina that do the digging around. We have genealogical experts that do it for us.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
And that's, if they had more specific questions to it too, we could definitely get those answers.
Yep.
Great.
Okay, so that'll be it for today. Next week, we will have our webinar, which will be back here in the States as we discover domestic adventure travel. But thank you again, Marina and Neil, for taking us to Scotland today. We really do appreciate it.
No problem at all. Great to see you.
You too.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night. Bye-bye.